All right. Hello. I'm so pleased that you didn't forget about us in the last couple of months because we don't get together in December because of the holidays. So we're really thrilled that everybody is here today. You'd like that a little closer. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Microphones are such wonderful things. We're thrilled that you're all back and that we are able to continue our 2025-26 Lunch Talk series. I think in the next few months you'll find some really interesting subjects, and we're glad that you are continuing with us. I should acknowledge first, how many are members of the society? Okay, and how many are not? Out. There is a desk up in the museum that you can sign up and become a member. This is a privileged, high-security enterprise, and we want this only for our members. And actually, having members is really important to us because if we go out for grants or something of that sort, we really need to demonstrate that there's a lot of support for what the Tempe History Society does. A grantor will ask, how many members do you have? 4. You know, that doesn't go very far. If you're a member and it doesn't cost very much, it really helps us raise money that in turn supports the museum. So with that, I also want to acknowledge the fact that our lunch talks are sponsored by Friendship Village. And I don't know, he was going to come today. Mark Young, who is Director of Marketing and Sales at Friendship Village. There's so much going on over there. A lot of new construction, a lot of activity. They're really kind of updating. When they started over 50 years ago, it was more traditional to have little townhouses or things of that sort. But today we have high-rise developments, apartments, things of that sort, and they've done a lot to keep up with the times. And I believe even under the new construction, they're nearly sold out. And soon they'll have a population over there greater than the city of Tempe and their own government. So if Mark gets here, we'll ask him to come up and say a few words. I think today's subject really demonstrates something of great importance in the city. First, how many have heard of Danelle Plaza? Ah, wonderful. All right, how many people have heard of Rob Moore? Oh, I was going to give a long introduction, but Rob has become a true, I don't want to say celebrity because that would swell his head more than it is. But Rob has has gone from being a behind-the-scenes volunteer for many different things, including this museum and the society. If there's an activity, Rob will be here to help support it. And that is critical for us. But I've watched him really grow, I think, in confidence and outreach. When I first met him, he really didn't want to say very much. And he said, just don't mention my name or anything of that. But now he is president of the Tempe Historic Preservation Foundation and really active in Danelle Plaza. That has had such an interesting history. I would tell you about it, but then I would take away all of his. But we need people like Rob because he goes to all of the meetings that the city has, and you've got to become a recognizable face in order to get things done in a city like this. And with regard to Danelle Plaza, artist James B. Hunt said, Rob helped foster a really cool thing here. There's a big difference between people showing up at a place because they feel like they have to, and people getting really excited and rallying around a place because it's cool and fun and new, and Danelle is that thing. And Rob has been instrumental in changing the image of Danelle Plaza. So with that, let me introduce to you my very good friend, at least in public, Rob Moore.
Thank you, Vic. Thank you all for coming out this morning, and thank you to the Tempe Historical Society for the invitation to present on the enigmatic Danelle Plaza. First off, though, piece of business, the museum staff has indicated I need to share this alert with everyone about a suspicious person seen lurking around the museum. That's his photo. There was an additional note that while not dangerous, he should be considered somewhat annoying and long-winded. And if you do see this individual, the museum has asked that you take him home with you. And his wife asked the same, especially if you live outside the, oh, here he is. Oh, look.
Let's all thank Rob for this incredible presentation.
All right.
We have learned so much more about Danelle Plaza than we ever wanted to before. And I want to thank you all for coming out today, and we'll have a great lunch talk that's really serious and important next month.
All right, I think everyone can settle down. I think the issue's been handled now. So, before I begin, I'd like to also pass along a big thank you to all those who've supported and contributed to the project over the past 10 years, and people I'm very indebted to, including the small business owners, the neighbors, community members, ASU Herberger architectural faculty, and students, along with local artists that have selflessly shared so much of their talent, time, and spirit within the process. And they have contributed more than anyone might know. So thank you all who helped make this possible. All right. Thank you all again for being here and allowing me to talk about Danelle Plaza. Many people may see as an awkward dated strip mall, in contrast, is a very special place to others, and has lent much to Tempe's growth and identity over the past 60 years of its existence. I'm going to be using broad brush strokes to narrate the Plaza story this morning, and apologize for anything that's not included, and I'd love to hear from anyone who wants to share their personal recollections. In fact, if you really have patience, it would be great to interview you as well, so please don't hesitate to reach out. On the surface, it's difficult to understand Danelle Plaza, what makes it so enigmatic, and that's why we're going to have this journey this morning. You may be more confused after this presentation than before, but that's most likely the Plaza's fault. So here is our subject, bounded in green. For those who don't know Danelle Plaza, it's located on the southwest corner of Mill and Southern in Tempe, Arizona. We're gonna step way back here. Like much of Tempe, this area was surrounded. The area surrounding Danelle Plaza was part of the Hohokam civilization from approximately 450 to 1540 AD that included sophisticated canal networks that irrigated large swaths of farmland across the valley. The future side of Danelle Plaza is no exception, as the main canal ran past its northwest corner of the property, now the intersection of Kyrene and Southern, joining a sub-canal that passes diagonally through the plaza, sprouting offshoots that supported field irrigation. Now, just to the southwest of the location was also a large Hohokam settlement, now references La Ciudad de los Hornos, complete with its own plaza, ball courts, and numerous ovens for processing agave. In more recent times, the farmlands were obviously again reactivated and irrigated with irrigated agriculture in the 1870s, with canal systems often utilizing similar routes as the HOCOM had established. And this became the formation for what is now known as Tempe. Attracted by the promise of expanding agricultural opportunities, Scandinavian immigrant Mons Ellingson arrived in the valley around 1881 and acquired a homestead site near the intersection of Mill and Southern, and in coming years would own the full section of land bounded by Southern Rural Baseline and Kyrene, which also included the future site of Danelle Plaza. Ellingson established his home site on the southeast corner of Mill and Southern, more or less where Burger King is now, if you have any awareness of the area. In this illustration, you can identify, and we're looking, all these illustrations, and I should have said that with the first slide, we're looking southwest towards South Mountain, which can be a little disorienting. So basically, the bottom right-hand corner is north, and I've just complicated things even more. But in the illustration, you can identify Ellison's home site on the bottom left corner. At the time, Mill Avenue terminated at Southern Avenue, just before the home site, and people would then jog over to Kyrene and use that to head south. The darker lines in the foreground represent the Tempe Canal's western extension that paralleled Southern Avenue. And the Maricopa and Phoenix Railroad would arrive a few years after Ellingson in 1887 and follow along Kyrene towards downtown Tempe. The future site of Danelle Plaza would be used as farmland well into the 1900s, where Ellingson grew alfalfa grains and raised cattle. Many immigrants were attracted to Salt River Valley, probably similar to Mons Ellingson, for the idea that the Salt River Valley and Tempe were good places to live and invest. Across the United States, regions, counties were all competing for immigration investment to help boost their economy. In turn, numerous pamphlets were produced illustrating why one place was an ideal over another, and it had the brighter future in comparison. By some form of serious luck, one of these pamphlets promoting the Salt River Valley featured an agricultural development just across the street from what is now Kyrene Road in 1893. The pamphlet included an aerial oblique illustration by C.J. Dyer that includes what would become the northwest corner of Danelle Plaza, complete with prancing horses, if you can see that in the bottom left corner. So that would be where the transmission shop is now, and that would basically be the intersection of Southern and Kyrene. Also interesting in this illustration is that of what they reference as Aztec ruins is actually the remains of the Ciudad Los Hornos that we discussed earlier in the background. You can barely see it, but it's a little hump in front of the South Mountain Range there. Well, with more inflows in Tempe, Tempe began to grow into a hub of agriculture, trade, and education within the Salt River Valley, growing at a steady rate into the 1900s. The land would eventually become Danelle Plaza. That would eventually become Danelle Plaza. Would spend many decades producing crops for local trade. It really wasn't until World War II that these seasonal alfalfa crops started giving way to home starts in the area, this area of Tempe, as the inflow of local population began to surge quickly, swallowing large sections of agricultural land in southern Tempe with single-family home starts. Driven by affordability, a growing defense sector, along with an expanding Arizona State University. There was tension between Tempe's agricultural-driven past, its vision for a modern future, not meshing well with the new suburban ideals that Tempe was reaching for. And sometimes it got a little awkward. Nevertheless, Tempe seemed dedicated to the suburban ideal, embracing mid-century modern architecture that signaled to the world that Tempe was anything but a backwater or cowtown, but instead a cutting-edge community with a cutting-edge university. The next chapter of American progress seemingly exemplified by the construction of Gamage Auditorium and other modern architecture examples sprouting across ASU's campus, along with the modern shopping center downtown at University and Mill, crowning itself Tempe Center. But there was another factor at play as well. By the 1950s, it was clear that freeways were coming, and they would be game changers for development and a sense of community center of commerce. And actually, this is a really interesting photo. Not only does it show the butte, and actually you can actually see Double Butte Cemetery too, there too. But you can see the traditional agriculture on the left with the canals, and then you can see the wave of housing coming in behind it. I really enjoyed this photo. Okay. Farmers took notice of freeway planning as well, especially the Ellingson family, who was still running the same farm site Mons Ellington established in the 1880s, which now had a proposed freeway bisecting the property. It came as no surprise when buyers and the developers were suddenly knocking at the door a bit louder. By 1961, investors had purchased a large block of this land from the Ellingson Trimble family that included the southwest intersection of Mill and Southern, and started working on a bold vision. With the help of the freeway, they announced that they would become the heart of Tempe's new downtown. The reality was it was a bold pitch, but they were leveraged on the latest narrative that the future that wasn't in the old downtown featuring Victorian era architecture based on a bygone era, but in the suburban momentum that was occurring, aligning new investment with the future, not imperiled by outdated systems. They backed this vision up with modern amenities, ample parking, underground utilities, wide sidewalks, and landscaping. Moreover, like most downtowns, you could actually buy the land beneath the businesses as an added advantage, proclaiming this was the first retail condominium center in the state of Arizona. They also illustrated this concept, included office space, and you can see the office hint in the illustration there, and also a cinema. So they were trying to distinguish themselves from this standard strip mall shopping center based around a grocery store. And equally, to add contrast between them and the more traditional shopping center on the other side of Roll at Mill and Southern, the intent was to present a sense of a retail center that had a diverse base similar to a downtown area. Omar Realty team picked Barry Gorin as the project architect, who is known for his commercial and residential projects across the valley. One of his large projects, recent projects being, recently being the Executive House Resort adjacent to downtown Scottsdale. His international style concept reinforced the developer's narrative of leaning into the future, featuring clean lines and efficiency, a departure from the past, a clear antithesis to downtown Tempe, and a glimpse into what the promise held for the new commercial nexus of Tempe. The property was replatted for this new commercial project in 1962, but Danelle Plaza was not officially announced until January 1963, followed by a groundbreaking, which is the photo, a few months later in April. And also note the Omar Realty billboard that stood along Mill Avenue in the background there. So the first phase, and this also lends a sense of the layout. So you can see the retail condominium structure here with all the breakout units. So each of those spaces could be purchased by an individual. And part of the game was, it was literally like Monopoly. The more spaces, the more properties you bought at the plaza, the more of the parking lot and the commons you owned. And actually, the stronger your vote on the board as well. So it was almost like a game, but it was a very open-ended game where the rules were very limited, and literally you could own a dirt lot as your business operation at Danelle Plaza if you really wanted to. It was a very free and open model and a very patient model, and a model that lent to a lot of diverse interests and individualism, which ultimately lent to a lot of the character that Danelle Plaza is known for. But the first phase was to install the entire infrastructure solution for the project, including parking, sidewalks, outdoor lighting, and utilities. The first building construction phase included a sizable center building in the middle, featuring expansive wooden truss to support the ceiling, a unit adjacent to the Phillips gas station that featured two breeze block exterior elements facing east, a garage door for an auto service access port supported by an interior cantilever system is the unit that you see near the intersection there. And it's still there. When you pass by you see the little garage door on there. And I think that unit was established in conjunction to support the gas station initially. And interestingly, it's a completely different architectural design than any of the adjacent future units. But again, they were kind of building these individually on spec, so this is no surprise that it stood out from the others. And then on the far right was another freestanding unit that was slated to be a veterinary clinic, which a lot of people actually remember to this day, with a final singular standing unit along Mill with its own parking lot. And there's a photo of the veterinary clinic, and that sign actually survived until a few years ago. Gradually, Danelle Plaza business advertisements began to appear in local newspapers. Now, while technically not part of Danelle Plaza, the gas station at the corner at the time was acquired by Phillips 66 and featured a gull wing style canopy reinforcing the fresh modern style, blending middle class luxury with space age flair. And this was a national effort that they were doing across the country to kind of grab everyone's attention, that they were also leaning into the future. Construction continued, and by 1965, several more building units were added. You can see almost like a sister unit, similar to the central one, was built along Southern, along with one on the east side and one on the west side. The one along Mill was actually something called Byron's Townhouse. It was more or less a classic 1960s nightclub, bringing a new cultural energy to the suburban Tempe, also along with live nightly music, where live bands played, along with a dedicated Hammond organ that was at the location. At the same time, it appears that a cowboy couple was opening a Mexican food restaurant in one of the nearby units, possibly signaling a new dynamic between the new and the old, seeing that the plaza was still largely surrounded by farmland. As time went on, new tenants arrived, and on the topic of live music, Temple Ballroom arrived around 1966, offering an alcohol-free youth venue for regular live music performances inspired by Beatlemania. And this was kind of a common thing. You always saw these cultural movements followed by some kind of investment concept along with it. The Hearstmen, pictured on the left, were a local team band that regularly played at the new venue. And at about the same time, we see the signature mid-century modern signage appearing. And one appeared on, this is a photo, obviously, along Mill Avenue. And there was one on that entrance and one on the southern entrance. The one on southern was a little smaller. But as anyone who's tried to go to Danelle Plaza knows, it's hard to find your way in. So I think these were badly needed, and when they disappeared, and you'll see what they replaced it with later, and it just didn't work. But you see the value of what they were on the right track when they worked with this concept. While construction of the units at the plaza was not continuous, there was another pulse between 1969 and 1973, as you can see on the map, including a swimming pool, and you can see the swimming pool on the right-hand side in the back corner. And some people may recall a place called Grecian Spa Fitness Center. It's strange. A lot of my neighbors remember this, and they also remember getting ripped off by them. So, and it's the same story every time, so clearly there's something to it. Everyone has these, that's their Danelle Plaza memory. And it's interesting, the fitness center pool dynamic was also a cultural thing, increasingly common occurrence in new suburban neighborhoods as community pools waned in popularity. The image on the left shows several new units built, photos of the units that were built, including a Dairy Queen, along with a new Moose Lodge that was located in the far southwest corner of the plaza. Interestingly, Kentucky Fried Chicken actually showed up in 1973. And just by the architecture, this is a rendering of the concept, and you can see it kind of looks like what was accomplished. But already, and this was 10 years after the plaza was established, but you already saw in architecture a movement away from mid-century modern. There was kind of an environmentalist movement where it was kind of reactionary, where they wanted things more traditional again. And so in this single build, you start to see the retaliation or the response to the mid-century, the utilitarianism of the mid-century, and more of a almost like a classic chateau vibe going on there with ornamental brick, not the clean elements of metal and such that we saw within the original concept. Through the 1960s and 70s, Danelle Plaza small business community seemed to be in full swing, attracting new tenants, but construction appeared to pause once again. As the city of Tempe saw itself moving into the future, as the top-shelf suburban community, along with the sense that downtown's character just didn't fit into the future, caused the city to make a bold move, replacing the existing city hall with a much more futuristic concept designed by Michael and Kemper Goodwin, along with Rolf Osland, sending a clear message that downtown Tempe was moving forward along with the rest of the growing community. As part of this effort, Danelle Plaza briefly became the civic center of Tempe, almost what they wanted, with the city council chambers, department offices, and library moving to the open units along Southern Avenue. Interesting, while the plaza hosted City Hall, a young upstart named Harry Mitchell was elected to the city council at that time as well. Nevertheless, City Hall seemed to be hedging its bets on where the future heart of the community would end up, approving the construction of the new Tempe Cultural Center, later to become where we are now, the Tempe Community Center, several miles from the downtown at Roland Southern. The rendering itself seems to reinforce this thinking, with this open horizon of the city's frontier beyond, with only lush lawns in view. Yet, with all the consternation about Tempe's identity downtown, there was an evolving new energy along Mill Avenue. Retail spaces were now more affordable, and local artisans and small businesses begun to spring up like flowers. By 1968, it held its first large-scale art fair that would eventually become Tempe Festival of the Arts. But the counterculture wasn't necessarily the image many were aiming for either, in contrast to the shiny new suburban future the city was working toward to curate. And as you can see in these 1973 plans, they already had a bigger vision for what Tempe downtown would become. The situation back at Mill and Southern was also changing with the arrival of a new large-scale Smitty's shopping center in 1976, bringing more retail competition to the area. I really like that Smitty's. I'm sorry they redid that. I also remember getting cookies there, so that might be why I liked it. Around the same time, there was another pulse of construction between 1977 and 78 at Danelle Plaza along Southern Avenue, including what is now the transmission shop on the corner and the car wash, which continued to honor Gorin's unifying awning style, mid-century awning style. But many most note the appearance. But maybe most notable was the appearance of an ambitious project called Skate the Shade at the center of the plaza. And again, you can see that location near the center building in the empty lot. In 1978, the idea of a skate park was still fresh in the idea, but had tons of question marks. There was a pulse of interest and the investment dollars following, each trying to create a challenging environment for young skaters, while not quite understanding what needed to get it done technically. Wally Holiday and Dwayne Bigelow partnered on this project, and amongst strong competition across the country, they were able to make a unique breakthrough on smooth, durable surfaces that impressed not only local kids, but professionals as well, who had tested surfaces across the country. Holiday and Bigelow took their method across the country and built some of the most iconic skate parks in the nation based on what they learned at Skate in the Shade at Danelle Plaza. Sadly, this business model itself did not work, and skateball was completely buried by the early 1980s. Another defining moment for Danelle Plaza was the coming together in the 1970s, the arrival of Star System. Initially a short-lived experiment merging two popular forces of Star Wars and disco together, the Stars, you can see why it didn't last very long, but it'd be amazing today, I don't know. Star System quickly pivoted, featuring fresh sounds of punk rock and new wave. The space plugged into the Los Angeles music circuit and was a regular stop for national acts, while featuring local bands that opened for them, swapping ideas with diverse performers that would roll through the venue, turning into a nexus for musicians exploring their own sound, including Billy Clone and the Nervous, Blue Shoes, and the Feeders. All the while, small businesses continued to flow through the plaza through the late 70s and into the 80s. And this is the first photo in the 70s when the mid-century sign disappears at the entrance on Southern, and it's replaced by this stumpy sign. And if anyone's driven past there, by the time you see the sign, you're past the intersection. So, it was an unfortunate transition, but kind of stylish, interesting when you look at it. It's, they tried, kind of. But the 1980s actually represented a final large-scale construction expansion at the plaza with Waltz TV, which I'm sure many of you remember, building their first retail unit along Southern in 81, and then another build-out completed by 1985. 1985 also saw the demolition of the Phillips 66 Gullwing station, replaced by the current Circle K, while Circle K still integrated Goring's original hatch awning into its new design. In the 1980s, Merlin's also swapped out for Star System, continuing to feature local and national live punk and new artist acts with regular performances by the Jetsons. It also closed around 1983, but not after incubating many of the bands that would define Tempe's iconic sound for the next decade. Interestingly, Merlin's was not alone as a small stage at the plaza. It had several active music venues, with Yucca Tap Room still leaning into its cowboy roots. It was diverse. There was country, there was bluegrass, there was jazz, there were blues, and some Hall of Famers actually started at Dan T's back in the day. So kind of an interesting situation where I had a rich ecology for local live music in one space, in multiple stages. New business would arrive at the plaza through the 80s. This picture was taken to the original mid-century modern sign in the early 80s, shortly before it was permanently removed. And so by the mid-80s, it had survived in what looks like pretty good shape until then, but it left at that point, and no sign replaced it, and people are still missing the exit today. At the same time, Tempe was going through yet another realignment, exploring the trend of suburban corporate office towers at the Silicon Valley as a Silicon Valley-esque economic driver, becoming something more to emulate. Interestingly, this new postmodern development made its own claim as, quote-unquote, the city center. Downtown was also gearing up for big changes, deploying eminent domain in its toolkit to make room for the future. As part of the effort, Q & Brew relocated to Danelle Plaza after the demolition of its building in 1987, or before, actually, problematic. And this was a dynamic moment for Tempe. Obviously, the demolition of that building led to the Centerpoint project, and that's when momentum started picking up, not only for the transformation, but also local live music along Mill Avenue started picking up. So it was a very dynamic moment when we had kind of redevelopment colliding with the local live music scene finding a voice, finding an identity, all at the same time. Interesting, there's one more historical element here, but I'm going to skip it because you can talk about with Vic later. Live music blossomed on Mill in the moment, and for the moment, Tempe was had a spot in the sun compared to Seattle, being compared to Austin and Seattle and other successful cities that look progressive and innovative, but the source came from bars and garages, not necessarily suburban initiatives. Eventually, small stages around the downtown became so overbooked that in the early 1990s, local musicians started checking for stage availability at a local country bar called Yucca Tap Room, and the Tempe's music scene returned to Danelle Plaza, creating a full circle. And while Danelle Plaza was revisiting its past, in 1989, neighboring mid-century modern Valley Fair opted to step away from its festival mid-century roots and embrace Memphis-style themed experience, postmodernism rejecting the austere utilitarian emphasis the mid-century modern design had offered in the past. And just a strange little note, obviously in the 90s, businesses continued to move into the plaza, and there was a healthy churn. Interestingly, the really last technical development that occurred, that the swimming pool actually got a roof in 1998, and it was legitimately really the last project at Danelle Plaza until this point. And then downtown continued to evolve and grow. Some remember the phase where it turned into kind of a high-end strip mall with the Gap, and Abercrombie and Fitch was there. Even McDonald's was there, Hooters was there. It was transforming from a local scene to a national scene. And there were a lot of mixed opinions on this. Rent started going up. A lot of local businesses were no longer able to survive there. This continued on, and the downtown continued to kind of redefine itself. The light rail was a good, critical incubator of this. The Centerpoint condominiums were. The city started leaning into bigger projects such as the Center for the Arts photograph there as well, and obviously the famed streetcar that's in the bottom right-hand corner. And the streetcar would actually have a incidental relationship with Danelle Plaza because it was a route planned that would run from downtown to Danelle Plaza as its terminus. And the city requested from the federal government to provide some loans to buy land at the plaza to incorporate affordable housing and a parking complex to facilitate this as a hub. And this was done as a CBDG project and was done successfully. However, the streetcar route was canceled. So all of a sudden, Tempe found itself with a chunk of Danelle Plaza without really a streetcar to support it. And so it started floating RFPs, and then people who looked at the RFPs realized what a complicated mess Danelle was in terms of ownership, and it would only go so far, it would fail, and it would start again. And at this point, there was a lot of attention. The Tempe Municipal Arts Plan came out, and there was a lot of concern from community members that the downtown really wasn't facilitating a rich creative ecology, and yet places like Danelle Plaza with Yucca Tap Room were creating these scenes and how critical they were to the community. And I was on the Arts Commission at the time, and I became interested in the plaza. And one of the first people I met was a gentleman named Evan Lingens, who was running a program called Tempe Art A Go-Go. And it started in downtown Tempe, and he built it himself. He was just a community member that wanted to build a nurturing mechanism for local artists, live music, and visual artists. And so he started this program called Tempe Art A Go-Go. And it started at Sail Inn, if anyone remembers that place off of Mill. And that got bought out, and then he got bumped. He looked around, and ultimately, one of the only options for him that had a connection with local creative culture was Danelle Plaza. And so he integrated with Yucca Tap Room and started doing the showcase at Danelle Plaza when I arrived. And I was in the Arts Commission. I understood the community's concerns about art scenes. And so, people recommended I went to go to Danelle Plaza. I met Evan, and he really inspired my effort to understand what was going on at the plaza, understand it as a community resource, and understand it for its potential as opposed to a blank slate for redevelopment. Within that process is when the Danelle project actually started. We worked with the current developers at the site, and in 2018 we were able to launch a mural project along with window installations. But apropos, that developer tapped out shortly after. And so then I started working directly with the city. By 2019, we had engaged ASU to start looking at the plaza for potential redevelopment solutions in conjunction with the city's economic development department. And we had a large-scale class that actually, for the first time, invited neighbors, small business members, artists, creatives, musicians into the class with over 100 students. We collected data and started actually looking at what Danelle Plaza was. And I was surprised. Like, I thought I knew it, but through that process, there's so many layers. These humble places that you disregard have such rich contributing histories to our communities that it's a lesson on not to overlook places like local strip malls as part of neighborhoods, which I think we do. We often do. Somehow we segregate these spaces from our environments. So when they get redeveloped, we're actually losing, or potentially can lose, critical resources to the neighborhood's identity and social growth, cultural growth, and economic growth as well. And so through this architecture program, the coordinating architecture professor, Ellen Aroki, put together several plans that started exploring the idea of what a mixed-use solution would look like, that leaned into localism, that leaned into the resources of the plaza, that leaned into the character in the mid-century design, while incorporating housing and other elements that met broader city goals. And so this was a great conversation. The city was very interested. And ultimately, this was incorporated in future RFPs and influenced the development agreement that's currently in place. So it was the first time Yucca was kind of acknowledged as a critical resource and the significance of the ecology. Is it perfect? No, but it's a right start. And as we look at downtown Tempe right now, it's kind of funny that we're at a moment where both downtown is distressed and Danelle is distressed at the same time, and it's hard to know where to look. In the sense of, what do we do next, or where are we headed? When we walk down our main corridor downtown, and there's so many vacant properties, and then we go to Danelle, and there's so many vacancies, in large part because it's in a redevelopment cycle, in kind of both. Instances, it raises questions like, where are we headed next? What are we responding to? Where do we need to go? What kind of opportunity is presented to us downtown, in downtown Tempe, and places like Danelle Plaza that we really shouldn't be missing? And as we've seen in this story, how frequently the churn is. Like, we're always reacting to something. We see the downtown as it is now. 10 years from now, we'll be headed in a different direction, whatever that might be, in whatever formation. But whatever is now will not be tomorrow. And that goes for Danelle Plaza too, and it's important to understand that change is a constant, but maybe we can formulate some fundamental ideas and lessons that we kind of learned through this journey, as not only as from Tempe, but other spaces. But Tempe has gone through enough that I think we have enough data now to make kind of informed decisions on what we've learned along the way. And we're back to our subject matter. And thank you. And if you guys want to see more photos of anything, I also have a little website, and so it's more information about the artists and the history of the plaza. So thank you again. Appreciate the opportunity.
Don't go away. Don't go away. Don't go away. There might be some questions, but first, I don't know if you addressed it, but everybody wants to know, how did Danelle get its name?
So that's, I know, but it's because the person's still living, it's a little bit tricky.
All right, can we get a little bit of expansion on that?
Yeah. So that person doesn't, it's a very private person, so they don't kind of want to be, and
I don't know, that's why you're here.
I'm not Danelle, if that's what you're after.
No. I recognize that.
Okay.
All right, but it is named after somebody.
Yes. Yeah, and the person's alive, so, yeah.
Okay. You and I will talk later.
Okay.
Because there's been a lot of discussion over the years, and if you go on some of the websites, it says, we don't really know how it got its name.
Yeah.
And, is it connected to the developer? Is it connected to a contractor? And you know all those answers, and you're not going to...
And I accidentally figured it out by a very random event that happened in a newspaper. Oh.
Whisper it to me.
No, I can't. I mean, fortunately, I'd have to kill you. But.
Well, and I thought we were friends.
Well.
In public. All right. I assume that everybody learned something about Danelle Plaza. It is a microcosm of the whole city's history and growth in a relatively short period of time, even from its concept, because, as Rob said, it was unique in its original thought and design. To have business condominiums is an unusual strategy. And I know that over the years, that's made it difficult for a single ownership of the property because everybody owned their own space. Can you talk about that? I mean, was it because then the developer didn't have to invest as much money, or it was a way to get a return on the investment?
Yeah, I think it's liquidity. I mean, there were so many options, so there were so many mechanisms for them to be handed money.
Closer to the microphone.
It opened, you know what I mean? I think you're right. I think it was a very efficient way to keep things going. I mean, it made sense because it had some truth to it, and that's always the basis for any story, right? Or sales pitch. It makes sense, but there's always a motivation. I mean, I can't speak to exact, but I think you're right. It was a very liquid way. And within a few years of it opening, things started going south pretty quickly. Like, you stopped seeing the advertising by that the creating organization within 2 years. Like, you could tell whatever had been set up didn't last very long. And I think that was very true for a lot of real estate ventures in the Wild West at that time, you know?
You might recall, and now it's out of my head, there was a similar concept of business-owned condominiums on what's now Rio Salado. I forgot what was the name of there was a bar or restaurant that was really famous in that. And they couldn't get anybody to come in, and finally APS took the whole second floor of that. You remember that?
Huh.
Don't give me that look.
I keep looking at Josh.
You know which one I'm talking about?
Jared, for that matter.
And then America West moved into it or bought it.
The old America West building?
No, not the high rise, the two-story. What was the famous bar that was in there? No, not Monty's. We got a historian, we got the director of the museum, and this isn't ancient history, folks. I
Are
want
you
to.
talking about, there was kind of like a little business plaza?
Yeah, it was 2 stories.
It was 2 stories.
Rio Salado and Mill.
It's called like the Mercado or something? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think it might have been the Mercado, and was there Dooley's, or what was the big? Well, no, Chewy's wasn't in it. Never mind. This is not going anywhere. I'll come back next
It's
month with the
interesting, though.
name.
It's interesting.
But it was the concept of selling individual commercial businesses, and it just didn't work, and it was vacant for, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 years until first APS moved in, and then I think America West, when it was formulated, bought the building. What's the?
I can't help you, Vic, I'm sorry.
Yeah, you're leaving me really embarrassed in front of all of this. Something else, there was a couple of slides that were interesting. One was, do you know the answer to that?
No, I don't know the answer to the question. Whenever
Okay, we'll get to that in a second. There was one slide that showed Ladmo's. Did you notice that? Was set up in Tempe. I don't know how long that business lasted.
A while.
Did it?
Actually, surprisingly. And he lived in the neighborhood too, right?
Yep,
Yeah.
yep. He was a Tempe resident. Also the swimming pool. I didn't know there was anyone go swimming there?
Oh, no one. That's amazing. Oh, no one wants to admit it.
Anybody heard of Danelle Plaza? Please raise your hand so we can. The other thing that I found interesting was the slide about Byron's. If you noticed at the bottom, it made no mention of Tempe. It said, only a short drive from downtown Phoenix. Just happened to be in Tempe. And the monument sign, then one thing, and then we'll go to some questions. I think that came in a period when the city was trying to find the model that had been created in Scottsdale. They did not like big signs anywhere, and they didn't like neon. And they did a complete survey of all the signs in Tempe and went around to each business and said, you've got a grandfathered sign, but let us tell you that if you have to just service it, we won't give you a permit to keep it. And what they wanted is what Scottsdale did. Cemetery signs is what I call them, monument signs. And that's why you saw them all along Apache Boulevard. That's when most of the neon disappeared, except for one place. The liquors, Jerry's. Jerry said, we're not going to take ours down. And I think that's the last historic neon sign. All right, enough of that. Nobody remembers that. Well, maybe it was the Mercado.
We'll talk later. We'll see if we can figure
Oh, fine, sure, we'll talk later when everybody's gone. Pardon? I'm sorry. No, that wasn't, that. It was, was it Rio Salado or First Street? No. I can see it, just a little bit off of west of Mill Avenue. No, that was down by the Ash Bridge. You had a question? No.
Thank you so much for the history. It makes me appreciate the plaza that much more. And I guess my question surrounds what's the status of the plaza right now, and what's the vision for the future?
Ooh. Who knows? The vision, I mean, kind of almost what this narrative what this narrative shows, that even if there is a vision right now, the economy changes. It's funny because even that Tempe Center that's located on southern, closer to McClintock, and the Southwest Center, the two kind of mid-rises in Tempe during the 80s, both of those concepts never finished. You know, if you look at aerial photos and see the graphics, they never resolved those projects. So even those with significant investment, development's weird. I mean, it can change on a dime. Owners change, economy changes, something random we never thought of changes, style changes, you know. So the only thing we know is that there's a development agreement, and then that development agreement, there are terms. How those terms are executed can go a million different directions. You know, meaning, interpretation, realities, you know, and development is there's a lot of theater in development. So you can be shown one thing and, you know, and again, it's a tricky business. It's a hard business, and so, you know, so sorry, that answer. It's a long answer to say I don't really know. There are hints. That's a great question.
The question is there a current owner? I'm doing this because it's streaming.
Yeah, and that's a great question. So there are still 7 owners at Danelle Plaza. Now the narrative sounds like they boiled it down, which is kind of true. See, this is how the grayness starts, right? But there are at least 6 owners there, maybe 7. I have to do my mental map. But there's a daycare center there. There's a pool hall there. There's obviously a car wash that's owned by one of the developers. But there's still a small business ecology. Cervantes is activating his space again as an event space. So it's a living, breathing small business area, which is challenging within a redevelopment narrative that says this might all end, and we don't know how it's going to end. And all the business owners were like, thanks. We'll hold on to our little property until something happens. And everyone just stares at each other. Now, they are as close as they have ever been. Like, it's no joke, like what has been accomplished. But it's also, the reality is there's still 6, 7 owners there with purchase agreements, and it's complicated. But it's still an active small business community. And until something happens, you know, it's going to continue to be so. So go out there and support Yucca. Electric Bat's incredible. It's an arcade that's there. It's expanded 3 times. During all of this, there are still small businesses that are thriving. Small businesses are the creators of everything. I mean, they drive so much, and they're the resilient ones. You know, it can be on fire, and they're opening another wing somehow. Do you know what I mean? But it's incredible. But if you get a chance, go to Danelle, check around, and support the local small businesses. There's also a new 501c3 art groups there. They're having a neat show tomorrow night. Like, it's still a living, breathing place, and that's part of the situation is what do we do with these living environments that are still supporting our community? How do we handle that within these situations, these very dynamic situations that we've seen play out again and again in the downtown? How is it going to play out here?
You talked about a daycare center?
Yeah.
That's Pumpkin Patch?
Yes, and that daycare center has existed since the 60s.
Yes, my daughter
Okay. all
went
right.
there in the last century,
Oh,
and she's still alive to tell the
Yeah.
tale.
but that's a continuous daycare business since the 1960s. So, interesting.
Right now for Danelle Plaza, is it not with a developer talking to the city about doing a development plan where that entity has all those other condominium locations on an option to purchase, and they have, I think it's 2 to 3 years to get their development plan and the rezoning approved relative to a retail arts, like the Yucca room with residential in the back? Is that not where it currently is?
I mean, right? I mean, it's that vague, right? And when you say the back, I mean, yeah, I mean so that's within the development agreement. So it's pretty clear, it's very clear it's going to be mixed use. There's going to be a residential component. There's, it's talked about the arts for the first time ever. It's talked about Yucca Tap Room. So the construct is there. But the how is there's so many hows to approach that. What is art? What is music? What is preservation? What is, the terminologies can be rendered in so many different ways. Fortunately, they've promised and the city has encouraged there to be a solid community feedback cycle when this all happens. And again, they're kind of in the cycle where they're trying to convince banks that this is viable. So they're kind of in the trenches right now. But, so they don't even know, what they can do. And so.
That's the most viable option that's been there for the past.
Yes, it's no joke. Like this is as close as it's ever been. And there have been, in the past 10 years, there have been so many fallouts with the proposals. And getting developers on site that eventually say, there's no way we can do this, after investing time and energy. So yeah, this is as far as it's ever been. It's impressive. And the gentleman who redid downtown Chandler, named his organization called Desert Viking, 30 years experience. Yucca Taproom brought him into the equation. Someone like that knows what he's getting into, the mess he's getting into, and he's willing to stick around and see it through. So the fact that he has experience and has done something like this other places, I think that's why we're seeing this being so viable. This is a person who knows what he's getting into and knows how to get it done and wouldn't get into it if he didn't think he could get through it. So I think that's why we're seeing it get so far. Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Moore, for speaking today. Quick question. Is the property historically listed by any organization, city, federal, local?
No. And that's a good question. In the last index, and you have to correct me on my terminology, Vic, in the last inventory in 2022, they accidentally overlooked the plaza for historical status. For whatever, I think they default, again, this is a weird thing, like people think strip malls and they set it aside. It's like, no. And again, they might not know, I mean, Danelle's hard to get into, so I give them a couple of outs. But, so interestingly, the buildings along Mill are qualified, but they kind of by default disqualified every commercial center in Tempe. And to be honest with you, I mean, Danelle is one of the best preserved mid-century retail complexes in the valley. I mean, when you look at photos from 1963, the light structure is the same, the base is the same, the awning is the same, the walls are the same, the infrastructure is the same. It's just a time capsule. Again, because of the complexity of this retail condominium, no one had enough coordination to make anything happen, so it just preserved itself. I mean, out of its stubbornness, it became a time capsule, which you got to give it some credit for hanging on this long in that way. So, yeah.
Rob, quick question. Is the source of your beautiful photos and remarkable collection from the museum, or is that somewhere else?
I mean,
your own work?
Yeah, it's eclectic. You know, sometimes I get a little desperate and I reach for stuff on the internet. But I mean, majoritively, I mean, we're so fortunate to have the collection we do at the museum, and we're so fortunate to have that sign database, because no one takes pictures of small businesses organically, but because the city did the sign audits, we have this documentation. And someone was smart enough in the development office or the planning office to hand it to them too. But it's a priceless resource. So a lot of especially the business photos, are through the museum. And it's fascinating because it's the whole city. So you can look in your neighborhood back in the 60s and 70s. It's a fascinating data set.
Hi. Up in Scottsdale, the corner of Scottsdale Road and Shea, there's a similar sort of
Yes.
place called Windmill Plaza
Yeah.
that was also developed in the 60s and 70s. Any relation to this? Was it the same architect, same plan? Any relationship at all?
I've looked and I couldn't find any crossover with coordinators, contractors. It's the same model. But it's functional. I mean, it's fascinating to go over there and see it, how it evolved. It might have had somewhat different basis, but I could never find any crossover between the two. It wasn't like they were saying we were doing this and we have a sister project in Scottsdale. And then when I looked into it, no names crossed over. So that's a good question. That's a mystery.
Rob?
A resource and a quick question. Tonight, there's a Tempe City Council candidate forum sponsored by the Republic. If you want to give your feedback on how you think Danelle Plaza should develop, they are allowing public questions. You mentioned that both Danelle Plaza and downtown are under distress. What is causing the distress?
Ooh. That's my second presentation. Thank you for coming. No. It's hard. I'm not an expert. You know, the guy you should talk to is right there. I mean, this guy has lived, breathed, and, you know, ate possibly the downtown for the past, 50 years? How long have you been there?
None of your business.
Okay. So you have secrets too. But Vic, probably of anyone, Vic is a living, walking resource that has such a long-term perspective on the realities of the downtown, but it's complicated too. But even in this narrative, there were hints, you know, along the way, and this has been going on for a while. But Vic, if anyone, would be able to provide some perspective.
Well, that's not all true. We've got a great Tempe historian in Jared Smith over here.
That's true.
Who can't remember the name of the... By the way, hopefully you'll all come back next month. I will have the name of it. I can see, and you'll remember the famous nightclub that was in there. And I'm surprised, Josh, that you didn't go there. No, not Studebaker's.
If you remember the street it is on, I think they'll be able to make progress.
First Street,
And
just west of Mill. I've got in fact, the book, it came out several times in the late 90s, early 2000s that the development office put out about all the projects that were in downtown. Do you remember that? Why don't you go find it real quick before we get out of here? It's affecting my hemorrhoids. No, not Chewy's. Chewy's was in Hayden Square. And it was on Mill Avenue originally, and then it went to Hayden Square. Oh, heavens. No. Not the Hut. Oh. This crowd isn't that old. You had to have gone to this club. I just don't remember it. Josh, Jared, you're just sitting there like with a blank stare. No. No. I will, as soon as I get back to my office, I know where it is. All right. As we found out, I mean, I don't know of any other place that has such a unique history as Danelle Plaza for all sorts of reasons. And I think it's really going to continue to take public pressure to convince the city for so many different reasons that this is a place worth saving. And when we do tours, I am not one of spending a lot of time on architecture. It isn't really great architecture down there, but buildings are built by and for people. And it's the activities that have taken place in those buildings that makes it such an important landmark in this city. And if nothing more, it should be a Tempe historic landmark. In all of your advocacy, you ought to be talking to the Preservation Commission about that. When I met this guy, he was like this. Do I have to get up and say anything? Not really, I don't know. I don't want to do that. But he goes to all of the meetings. He is so much aware of what is happening in this city. And we owe a big debt of gratitude and thanks for the work that Rob is doing. Rob is going to hang around, so if you do have any questions, feel free to talk to him. Oh yes, Rob is a legend. I don't know how that happened. We've lowered our standards as a historical society. So much is happening even in this first month of the new year. If you get a chance before you leave, we do have a very interesting changing exhibit in the main gallery called Triumph in Tragedy, Stories of Courage and Connection. And this is in concert with the Arizona Jewish Historical Society. And it deals with survivors of the Holocaust and some of those experiences. It's really an emotional thing to see. Next month, we will have a presentation about Black family genealogy and history from their society, researching ancestors in Louisiana who are my grandfather's people, but I don't know who's supposed to be doing that. But nonetheless, we hope that you'll come for that. Put on your calendar, we're doing more activities at Double Butte Cemetery, and one of the things about the Double Butte, if you haven't been out there, it's in pretty sad shape, but Rob is one of the leaders of the effort to restore the historic section of the cemetery. It wasn't this desert landscape that you see today. There were trees, there was vegetation there was irrigation on the property, and we have a pledge of $1 million if the city will come up and match that for the restoration, because in that historic section is the whole history of the important people who helped build this city. So they will be doing, the museum will be doing the Double Butte Cemetery Women's History Tour on Sunday, March 8th, 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. And as with anything connected to the museum, it's free, but if they do try to charge you, just tell them that I sent you. Tempe also manages some very historic properties, and periodically they are open for tours that are free. The next one coming up is the Eisendrath House on Saturday, January 24th, 11 a.m. to 2 p.m., and then again on April 25th. The Elias Rodriguez House, Saturday, February 21st, and then the Peterson House on Saturday, April 11th. Hopefully everybody made it out to the Peterson House Christmas. Did you go there? You did go there, all right. And if you're not members, then still get out and become a member. And that's really exciting because the house is really fixed up for the holidays. And Niels Peterson had so much to do with the history of the early history of Tempe. In fact, I think at one point he was considered the wealthiest man in the entire valley, but a really good guy and significant contributor to our past. Let me see here. In February, on the 6th of February, the AAAC, the African American Advisory Committee, will be holding its annual Faith in Action Prayer Breakfast, which isn't quite as serious as it sounds. It's a great gathering, 9 to 11 at the Tempe Center for the Arts. There is a charge for that. So that's about it. You just need to get on the society's newsletter list and the museum's newsletter list, because so much continually happens here at the museum. All right, so again, Mark didn't show up, and so I want to give thanks and recognition for the long time contribution to our lunch talks by Friendship Village. Without their help and support, we wouldn't be able to put all of this on. All right, I will be back next month, and I will tell you what that place was and that nightclub, and then you're going to go, oh, sure, I remember that. Meanwhile, I'll be embarrassed and out of the city until February 11th. Thank you all. Have a great start to the new year. We'll see you next month.